Patrol. The tallest, fastest, and longest steel coaster in Kings Island needs you. Must be able to handle a 300-foot drop and speeds up to 91 miles per hour while dodging meteors. No training required. Are you up for the challenge?
Introducing Orion at Kings Island, one of only 7 gigacoasters in the world.
Right now, everyone pays kids' price. Kings Island tickets, just $45 online.
I'm John Batchelor. This is the new John Batchelor Show, CBS Audio Network. Joseph Sternberg, my colleague, member of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. He's based in London. He writes political economics, and that is much in the news because of the recovery, how we recover, and what it means to have large, generous packages from Washington or from the EU to Italy or from anywhere handed over because of the recovery. What does that mean for growth, for prosperity, and especially for that favorite monster of the 20th century, inflation? Joseph, a very good evening to you. Your new column, updating a column you wrote last winter about inflation. No longer the question, is there inflation? The question is how to understand our betters, our leaders, our superior economic speakers, both in Europe and in North America, when they talk about temporary inflation. Temporary inflation. It sounds benign. Is it? Good evening, Joseph.
Hey, John. Yeah, this is going to be the big new thing, and expect to hear more about this later this week when the Federal Reserve has its next policy meeting. Basically, what's happening is we have discussed on this program many times in recent months, we are starting to see inflation. We're starting to see a pretty hefty dose of inflation. We're starting to see a lot of commodity prices going up. We're certainly seeing asset prices going up, and that is finally starting to filter through to a bunch of other prices that consumers pay for things. I think that now actually some measures of consumer price inflation might even put it above 2% for a bit. There are signs that the prices that producers are paying for their inputs are increasing, so that's going to feed through to consumer prices in coming months. And the dilemma is, what should central banks do about it? And it's a dilemma because the central banks don't want to do anything about it. They don't want to have to increase interest rates at this particular moment. And so what they are coming up with is this new way of talking about inflation as if this is transitory inflation. It will be temporary. This inflation is a figment of your imagination because it's only showing up in the data because prices were very low this time last year in the depth of the pandemic. And it won't last forever because eventually all of this pent-up demand that households are filtering through to the economy will dissipate and we'll all go back to normal and we won't have inflation anymore. Now, I mean, listeners will know that this is ridiculous because even if you have, above average inflation for a bit, even once you don't have the inflation anymore, you still have the high prices forever. But this is going to be the new way we'll talk about this for the next few months. Central bankers and monetary theorists telling each other there's no permanent inflation here. So even if there's a little bit, it's not going to last forever. We don't need to worry.
Inflation. I check which one of these indicates the inflation is not temporary, but it's here to stay. You cannot find labor to use the lumber you cannot buy. To build the house you cannot get built because you don't have the labor and the lumber. All of this means higher prices for the labor if you can find it, very high prices for the lumber, and a shortage of housing, meaning that the prices of the existing housing are going up. Is that all temporary inflation, Joseph?
Well, so it might be. And see, the problem with all of this discussion, and I think that the reason that a lot of, sort of quote unquote mainstream monetary economists think that they can get away with talking inflation this way is that you have two different phenomena. So inflation is a rate. It's the rate at which consumer prices have increased compared to where they were at some point in the past. But the underlying thing that is changing at that rate is the price level. And so, it's sort of like if you're driving in a car and you hit the gas pedal, you'll accelerate for a bit. You might pull back on the gas, or you might even put on the brake a bit, and your speed will come down, but you're still further down the road than you were before. So I think that what we're going to see is that some of these dynamics that seem to be fueling the inflation right now might actually ease up. It could be that, once people have sort of finished renovating all of the kitchens in America in everyone's home, there won't be demand for those building materials in the same way. Maybe those prices will, maybe the inflation of those prices will start to ease a little bit. But the prices are still going to be at that permanently higher base level. You'll be further down the road. And that's really the thing that we need to be talking about, because even if in the future inflation does start to abate a bit, and so that the prices aren't going up at a faster rate in the future, we do need to reckon with the fact that they will be at a higher baseline at that point. And there are a lot of serious economic consequences of that.
I want to give other examples of what may or may not be temporary inflation. The one that I'm keen on right now is labor shortage and bidding on labor shortage. There are signs in the country, I've seen them, where franchises will pay you $50 if you'll come in for an interview to be a wait staff or hospitality staff. $50 for an interview. At the same time, there are franchises and restaurants and other hotels in America paying bonuses if you'll stay 6 months, $2,000 or $3,000. A sizable percentage if you're working on minimum wage or just above minimum wage. Is that inflation, Joe? Can we expect people to be paid less afterwards, or will those salaries always climb?
No, and you see, this is a big part of the problem, again, that we have with this kind of discussion, because I think that some of those salaries might end up being permanently higher. Some workers are going to experience, higher wages, hopefully permanently. You never want anyone to be paid less in the future. And, remember, again, going back to what economists say about the situation, that's part of their justification for ignoring this temporary inflation, that eventually the wages will rise to match. But I think that the people that you need to think about are not the ones who see that, spike in wages or the kind of bonuses that you're talking about, but you also have to look at people who are not going to be working at all, who are going to end up being priced out of the labor market because the productivity of their labor, what the skills that they can offer to a potential employer are not enough to justify the higher wages that employers need to pay to attract work. So what we're going to end up creating is this dual-track labor market, even more than we already have, where if you happen to be working in a field where there's a labor shortage, you'll be very well off. Your wages are going to go up. But if you work in other fields, you're going to find the general wage level is kind of, in a way, inflating you out of the job market because your labor in your particular industry won't be valuable enough to warrant those higher wages. So this is very distorting, and you always need to look not just at the people whose pay is going up, but you also need to look at what's going on with other workers and how this inflation is distorting job creation, distorting hiring, distorting investment decisions in ways that are not good for a lot of workers.
You mentioned in your column that Britain went through transitory inflation after the financial crisis of 2008. And I believe what you're reporting is that the wages never caught up. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes, this is the big thing that we really have to be careful about. And this is what we have to keep in the back of our minds when you do see the stories that will be bubbling up in coming months about wages going up for some workers. There are going to be a lot of others who will be left behind. And in fact, that is probably part of the point of these temporary inflationary policies from the Federal Reserve and other central banks, because what that does is it basically reduces the inflation-adjusted wage level in your economy if you have price inflation, but wages are not keeping up, sort of in nominal terms, as economists would say. So what you're doing on the sly is giving everyone a pay cut in terms of their purchasing power, and, you know, in terms of their purchasing power in the global marketplace, without actually reducing the numbers on their paycheck. You've accomplished this through inflation. And this was a really pernicious method that the British economy after the 2008 financial panic used to adjust to the new normal. Their method of economic adjustment was this decline in real wages. I mean, people saw their purchasing power going down by, between 6 and 7% over the 5 to 6 years after that 2008 crisis, and then again after the Brexit referendum. Policymakers thought this was a great thing because, it allows your economy to adjust to the new economic realities without having to do any painful, structural reforms to your economy. But, I mean, people really get hammered by this, and we shouldn't be blind to who is going to end up paying the cost of these policies.
I'm speaking with Joseph Sternberg. He writes the political economics column based in London for the Wall Street Journal editorial board. He's a member of the editorial board. We're going to turn to the vaccine and the virus next, especially Vaccine Britannia. There is a sharp fight of words going on in London right now about Boris Johnson and his previous guru, Mr. Cummings. I'm John Batchelor. This is the new John Batchelor Show.
This is Mission Control. The tallest, fastest, and longest steel coaster in Kings Island needs you. Must be able to handle a 300-foot drop and speeds up to 91 miles per hour while dodging meteors. No training required. Are you up for the challenge?
Introducing Orion at Kings Island, one of only 7 gigacoasters in the world.
Right now, tickets are just $39.99, only at visitkingsisland.com.
Ready, set, summer. Start your summer off fresh with savings on washers and dryers during the Memorial Day savings event at the Home Depot. Give your laundry room an upgrade with big savings in-store and online on top appliances like LG high-efficiency top-load washers and dryers for just $6.98 each. Right now, you'll save a bundle. So kick off your summer with the Memorial Day savings event at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. U.S. only while supplies last. Free delivery on purchases of $396 or more. Valid through June 9th.